You've been hunting for a laptop that can actually keep up with long gaming sessions, stream your favorite shows, and still feel light enough to toss into a backpack when you need to head out. The problem is, every time you find a machine with a massive spec sheet, you start wondering if you're paying for hype instead of real-world usability. You want something that won't surprise you with sudden heat spikes, won't drain the battery the minute you launch a game, and won't sit on a shelf gathering dust because it's too bulky for daily life. That hesitation is exactly why I spent a good chunk of the week setting up the MSI Pulse 16 AI, running a few games, editing some video, and then taking it to a coffee shop to see how it behaves outside the bedroom desk. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through what I found, who this laptop actually makes sense for, and where you might want to look elsewhere. First off, the Pulse 16 is marketed as an AI-powered gaming laptop. In practice, that means MSI has baked a software layer that tries to predict your workload and shift power between the CPU and GPU on the fly. When I opened a demanding title like Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p, the frame rate stayed comfortably above 60 frames per second and the fan noise was comparable to a high-end desktop tower under load. The AI did seem to keep the temperature around 78°C on the GPU, which is respectable for a thin and light chassis. In a real-world sense, that translates to less audible fan whine when you're trying to talk to teammates or stream with a microphone. The display is a 16-inch QHD Plus panel with a 240Hz refresh rate. For competitive shooters, that extra 10 milliseconds of input latency reduction can feel noticeable, especially when you're fighting for that headshot. But the panel also offers a wider color gamut, so when I switched to Adobe Lightroom to edit a few photos, I could see the extra depth without cranking the brightness. The real test for me was using the screen in a brightly lit CAF. The anti-glare coating held up, and even at 150 nits the image remained readable, a decent compromise for a laptop that still fits into a backpack. Now, let's talk about the core hardware. The Intel Core Ultra 9185H is a 16-core beast that promises beyond fast performance. In day-to-day tasks, browsing with dozens of tabs open, running a few Docker containers, or compiling code, the laptop felt snappy. The 64 GB of DDR5 RAM eliminates any concern about multitasking bottlenecks. For gamers who also do content creation, that RAM headroom means you can have a game running while you have DaVinci Resolve open, without the system swapping to the SSD. Speaking of the SSD, the 1TB NVMe drive loads Windows 11 Pro in under 10 seconds and pulls game assets from Elden Ring in a flash. The drive is fast enough that I never hit any stutter when jumping between a game and a web browser. However, the storage is not user-replaceable without opening the chassis, and MSI doesn't provide an easy tool-free access panel. If you anticipate needing more than a terabyte for a growing game library, you'll either have to rely on an external SSD or be prepared to disassemble the laptop, a step that might deter less tech-savvy buyers. Battery life is where the Pulse 16 shows its trade-off. With the 99 Wh battery, I could get about 3.5 hours of mixed-use, some light gaming, a bit of video editing, and a lot of web browsing. Once the GPU kicked in for a serious gaming session, the runtime dropped to under an hour. If you expect to game on the go without plugging in, this isn't the best choice. The laptop does support fast charging over USB-C, so you can get roughly 50% charge in 30 minutes, but the overall endurance still leans heavily toward a desktop replacement mindset. Port selection is surprisingly generous for a 16-inch chassis. There's a full-size HDMI 2.1, a DisplayPort-compatible USB-C that can carry both power and video, plus 3 USB-A 3.2 ports for peripherals. I paired a 144Hz monitor at home and a USB-C dock at the office without any hiccups. The only slight annoyance is the lack of an Ethernet port. If you need a wired connection, you have to use a dongle, which adds another piece to your bag. Who should consider this laptop? If you're a competitive gamer who also streams or does occasional video work, the Pulse 16 gives you enough horsepower to handle both without lugging a desktop. The AI-powered power management helps keep temperatures and noise in check, which is a real win when you're recording commentary. It also fits nicely into a commuter's bag, so if you travel between a university, a coffee shop, or a LAN party, the size and weight feel manageable. Who might want to skip it? First, anyone whose primary concern is battery longevity for long trips. There are other thin and light laptops that can stretch 8 hours on a single charge. Second, if you're a pure-play console gamer who doesn't need the extra RAM or the 240Hz panel, a cheaper 1080p